Member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to speak today on Bill number 180, an act to amend Chapter 31 of the Acts of 2001, the Fatality Investigations Act. And I just want to start out by saying that, of course, our party is in support of this bill and the intent of the bill, because anybody who's been a victim of domestic violence or any child who has suffered deserves to have answers to what's happened to them. So at this stage, I'll just raise a couple of questions for the minister. There are other committees in other provinces that have already done this. And so I am wondering where the minister stands on what those committees have found in the past. One of the ones that I wanted to draw our members here attention to is the Death Review Panel releases recommendations on reducing youth suicide. And this was an August 16, 2019 report, and I'll table that in a minute. According to the report, the panel identified 3 key areas to reduce child and youth suicide deaths and to improve public safety. This panel recommended that the province adopt a mental well-being strategy as part of a social emotional learning for students. Number 2, the recommendation was to identify and distribute provincial best practice youth mental health guidelines. Number 3 was to expand youth mental health services. According to the Nova Scotia Health Authority's own statistics, last year there were 1,400 fewer mental health visits last year than the year before. So without knowing for sure and without being too pessimistic, what I've seen in my years in this legislature is that we have a lot of reports and we have even more committees who make hundreds and hundreds of recommendations to the government, and then the government picks a few that they like and put a few resources into individual cases and offer a few grants for communities. But like other members have said, this isn't a binding committee. They aren't able to compel the government to do anything. So although this bill will set up a committee, there is going to be no obligation on the government to listen to what the committee recommends. The other comment I want to make is that these 2 committees need to be there. The Clause 3 allows the establishment of other death review committees. I'm personally encouraging this government to set up a suicide review committee, because as I've mentioned before, there were 7 suicides in my constituency alone. I don't know how many else there were around the province, but I don't think you need to be under 25 before we look into that. So I would encourage this government to consider amending its own legislation, or to consider an amendment to the legislation next week to automatically add a 3rd committee that would look into the suicide deaths of Nova Scotians in this province. And again, I'll look forward to other members' comments as well as those from those in the public through law amendments. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.